Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Small Success Podcast. Feeling a little bit nervous about today. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Pam Downing. I'm the Operations and Marketing Strategist here at Rejection Media, and I'm here with Drew. Drew, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Drew. Drew Larison, founder and creative director of Rejection Media. Thanks for having me on the show.
You're welcome. I'm really glad you're here because today's topic,
I hope we don't screw this one up.
it's a little bit cringeworthy, you guys, but we're going to go there. Okay?
Such a buzzword these days. People say they're like cringy. People say that more these days. Like social situations, they'll define it as cringy. I feel like we don't say awkward anymore.
It's true. We're moving past the awkward. Or are there just more cringeworthy situations
That might be it.
these days? I don't know.
Cringy.
I'm glad. I was not a fan of the awkward, like the awkward is cool phase. No, I was not on board with that. Made me cringe.
Made you cringe?
Made me cringe.
Made you feel awkward?
Okay, well, speaking of cringing and feeling awkward, buckle up because we're going to go there today. We're talking about failure.
Put your podcast belts on. This one might get rocky.
That's right. But here's the thing, everyone. Failure
We're
is...
terrifying people. We've really hyped this up to be a really terrifying thing.
Anyone still listening? Okay, great. So here's the thing. Here's the thing about failure, which is so funny. Like many taboo topics, failure is something that's universal.
Yeah.
Like if you are alive, you have failed at something. And that may be something really small. It may be something that has literally altered your life. But on the spectrum of failure, if you're listening to this podcast, you've done it. And there's a difference between, and we're not saying you are a failure. We're just saying people are people and people make mistakes. So today we're going to put a fresh spin on failure and talk about why maybe it's not the worst thing ever. Drew, any thoughts on failure before we really dig in?
I'm a fan of failure. I feel like I went on a rant on some other podcasts we've done where I've kind of like, I called for flipping the switch on the whole idea of failure in like our society in America, where like I want to celebrate it. And instead of like making it this taboo topic or subject that no one wants to talk about, I love the idea of celebrating it because better things with the right attitude, better things come out of failure. Progress comes out of failure. Better products, better services, better businesses, better leaders, better employees, better anything does not come without failure. So I think in my head, I love the idea of like when someone fails, we're so happy for them and we celebrate that because what is on the other side is better from what they were before.
Yeah.
That's my small rant on failure.
It's
a hard thing to do though, is flipping that switch. But if you could, amazing things can happen.
Yeah, it's true. And this is really interesting coming from you too, because you're an Enneagram 3. So small shout out to all you Enneagram nerds out there, because as a 3, as an achiever, failure has got to like send shivers down your spine.
In some ways.
But with this fresh perspective,
yeah,
we're about to change.
I'm a really healthy 3, so I'm just at a different space.
Okay, so I am a not so secret fan of Brene Brown. And for those of you who don't know Brene, I am so sorry for you. I'll link to Brene in the podcast notes. But she has this approach where she talks about essentially what you were saying, Drew. Her thing is
Brene and I are basically like the same person.
Yeah, well, you know. She talks about how there is no innovation and creativity without failure, period. So here are our thoughts on failure that we're bringing to you today. When you fail, you're forced to stop. And as a small business owner, you know what it's like. You're doing all the things. You are moving at high speed all the time. Your schedule is probably overly full. And sometimes it probably feels like Groundhog Day. You wake up, you're really busy, you go to sleep, you wake up, you start all over again. So there are times when you fail. Again, it may be large, it may be small, but failure causes you to really stop and regroup. And there's a lot of different components here, right? Maybe there's a small component of embarrassment. You tried something new, it failed. No one likes that feeling. Maybe there's just that feeling of pause. Maybe you're physically forced to stop, or whatever the thing that fails, it takes something out of your schedule. So there is this built-in pause when you have failure, and that causes you to get a new perspective. It causes you to stop, take a look around, and regroup. And about what you were saying about kind of coming out on the other side, it's in this pause right after the fail. That's where some of this gold stuff happens, because, I'm going to move us forward in the conversation here, but instantly you have a perspective shift. Instantly you have an attitude shift. It's making you stop, and that's not always a bad thing.
Yeah. But all at the same time, I feel like when you are stopping, the goal is to stop for the shortest amount of time possible. Because like when you're in that stop, it's easy to just hit that rut and then stay there out of like idea that you're a failure.
It's a good point.
But like the stop is important to realize that a failure happened. Something screwed up. Something did not go as planned. Great. Keep moving. Like in my head, that stop, that's all that should happen in that stop, is realizing it happened, being aware that something did not go as planned, being aware that something that you wanted to do didn't happen, but then go and then climb out of that and keep going. But what's tough is it's going to happen again. But I feel like the more you fail with the attitude of moving forward as fast as possible, the failures matter less and less to your like psyche, to your mental attitude of like what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's a great point.
There's a great like Zuckerberg quote, how like Facebook got started. It was like, move fast and break things.
Yeah.
Like that's how Facebook began. That was their attitude of their startup. It's like, we're inventing a new world here. Like when sure there was MySpace, but like really what they were doing was a brand new world and how they were doing it. Let's move really fast. Because technology moves fast. We have to move faster than technology and the expectations of internet users. Let's move really fast. We're going to break things, but let's keep moving fast and breaking more things and learning from those broken things, rebuilding those broken things and making them hard to be broken the next time.
Yeah. That's a great point. There's a little bit of magic involved in not camping out in the failure and like wallowing and like spiraling down into like a bad place. And
that goes back to what I was saying. Like when you hit that wall, when you have that failure, don't look at that as a negative. And we've been trained to do that probably since kindergarten, or even before kindergarten when we were punished as toddlers from our family or whatever. We've been trained to be looked at as failures as horrible things. And sometimes the size or what the failure could be, it could be a horrible thing.
Right.
But really just taking that switch and reverse engineering your brain to thinking what that actually is when it's happening and move forward quickly. But you can't look at a screw up as something that is ruining everything. A screw up, a failure, a mishap is such an opportunity to do things better and moving towards what you actually want to do.
Yeah, I mentioned this on the blog that I'll link to as well. But I use the analogy of like a mountaintop and a valley. So when you're in the valley, instead of staying there, it's like, take a look around, enjoy the view of the valley, but that's not the best thing.
Yeah.
You want to keep going, keep climbing, keep moving forward. So taking that forced stop with your failure, taking that pause, but not living there, moving on and moving forward.
I can't get the idea of like a hurdles race, Olympics race with like hurdles out of my head. And like, some hurdles you're going to jump over perfect and keep running. But every now and then there's going to be one that is too tall or you miscalculated how tall it was and you're going to bump it. You're going to fall down. What does an Olympian do when that happens?
They literally.
Do you think they sit on the track for a good amount of time and like, you're like, all right, what happened here? Let's just really camp out here for a second. No, they get up as fast as they possibly can and move on to the next one.
Right.
What an awesome analogy to like think of that. And we're talking about freaking Olympians. They know what they're doing in their world. That's something we should model afterwards. Is really just they get up as quickly as possible. They don't wallow. They don't care about the past because the past it's already happened, and they keep moving forward as quickly, literally, as they possibly can.
Yeah. In that case, literally.
Yeah.
Okay, so another part about failure is that it instantly changes your attitude. It is very difficult, unless you are an award-winning actor, to maintain a big ego and tons of confidence in the midst of failure. Again, we are not saying like this should change who you are. And, you know, it is good to have confidence in what you're doing. It's good to believe in yourself. But when you're in those moments of failure and you're regrouping, you take a bite of humble pie.
Yeah.
And that in itself gives you a new perspective on things. The other cool thing about that, again, it's this magic place of taking a little bit of time to reflect and moving forward, and yet not staying stuck. But when you look at whatever the failure is, let's use the example of a restaurant. Say you try out a new menu and it completely bombs and fails. Well, as you're regrouping, as you are analyzing what you're going to do next and how you're going to move forward and get back up, your humble perspective may lead to some new and creative and innovative ideas. The other thing is, it's like, we talked about this a little bit with creativity, but I almost feel like it's like a muscle. Like the more you fail, the less uncomfortable it is. And so because you have a new humble perspective and you are more innovative and you are more creative, you may also be a little bit more risky, which could result in some really cool things.
But there's also what I was saying earlier of every time you fail, if you fail correctly, you've made whatever you had before stronger because you've learned from that failure.
Yeah.
So the stronger you move forward with whatever you're doing, you might fail again, but maybe a little less because you built something better.
Yeah.
And you keep going. And I don't know, in my head, I see like a robot. You know, you're building a robot, and first it's this tiny little thing, and then it breaks, but then you build onto that robot. It's a bigger robot, and then it breaks again, but it's a stronger one now because you know what happened. And by the end of that line, you've got this destroyer of a robot, and it can take on failures a lot easier than what it can before. But I think the big thing in our world, when we fail and like we get into that cloud of I'm a failure, what we really care about is what other people are thinking about us when we fail. We care way too, and this is once again coming from an Enneagram 3, so I'm very aware of this. We care way too much about what people think of us and what people think about when we're failing.
Yeah.
We care way too much. But here's the thing. Usually the people that we're worried about caring about what they think about us have different goals.
It's true.
Have different businesses that have nothing to do with your business, have different in mindset in life. Why the heck do we care about those people and what they think about us? They're not our customers. They're not our employees. We care more about what people think about us that they have nothing to do with us.
Right.
Stop that. Care about yourself, your team, your product, your service, whatever you're providing. Because even like the restaurant example you gave, your menu failed. Probably in that moment, if you were only concerned about your customer's opinion, you know how fast you'd move to try to fix that?
Yep.
You'd move so fast because your customers mean so much to you and their opinions mean so much to you.
Right.
They should.
Right.
They're the one feeding you. They're going to like feeding your employees, housing your employees, literally. But what we're probably worried about is the restaurant down the street or like the people in a networking group we're in that saw that failure. We're more worried about those people who don't matter at all to the success of our business.
Yeah.
But if you're worried just about what that customer thinks, you're moving so fast to try to fix that. You're asking them, what items would you like to see? Did you like this? What didn't you like about this dish? You're moving so quickly if that's your only attitude. But our attitude most of the time, oh, so-and-so probably knows that didn't go well. Or, oh, they saw that probably didn't go well. But the people we care more about don't matter to us.
And those changes you're describing, I mean, in the restaurant example, that could literally happen overnight.
Next day.
I mean, it could happen that afternoon.
Next day. Move fast.
Yeah.
You broke some things. Cool. Move fast.
Right.
Move fast and break some more.
Well, and the other thing, just on the topic of people's opinions, the people who truly care about you and they are your fans, maybe it's someone in your networking group, when they see you fail, their thought is, okay, how are they going to get back up? How can I cheer them on? How can I help them through this? The people who are like, oh,
look at these people.
Right.
Who cares what they think? They don't do anything to make you more successful. They don't bring you happiness. Those people, no matter if you're successful or not, are going to come up to you and say congratulations.
Right.
Quit seeking congratulations from people that will never tell you congratulations.
It's good.
Quit seeking their approval. Their mindset is to never approve of you. That's never going to happen.
Yeah. And on the flip side, you may be surprised. You may have some fans come out of the woodwork who come alongside you and help you through that failure, or they may share with you. They may have a moment of vulnerability where they say, listen, I've owned my business for 30 years. Here's what happened to me 25 years ago. Here's what I learned from it. How can I help you through this?
Listen to those. Those are the people that matter.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
Right.
So when you talk about that whole topic of like people get into this fog after failure, that happens because we're caring way too much about what people think about us from the people that don't matter to anything that's going on.
It's true. Okay, that's good. That's good. Here's the other great thing. When we touch on this a little bit, when you fail, you're forced to make a decision. And we are encouraging you to make that decision to move forward and get better and regroup and learn from it. And that upward momentum. Don't sit there too long. Get up, try again. But the great thing about, there's this it's not FOMO, but it's like fear of making a decision. Have you read or seen about this? It's like a new thing. When you're hanging out with a friend and you're like, where do you want to go out to dinner? I don't know. Doesn't matter.
You mean like every night in my home?
Yeah. Well, but as a small business owner, your decisions matter.
Sure.
You give thought to them, but it's like that Mark Zuckerberg quote. It's like, just do it. Just make a decision and move forward. And that's a part of failure, and not being stuck in the fail, but moving forward, making a decision, trying something new. Even if the new decision is not the best decision, you're going to learn from that and grow and get better.
Sure.
And move on.
Yeah. You got to think of like some of the most successful, biggest companies in our world right now. I keep thinking of like Airbnb. We're planning a trip to Florida, so Airbnb's in my head a lot as a consumer, as well as I'm amazed at what they do. But like, think about this boardroom or this coffee shop where Airbnb got started. All right, I have an idea. I want to create a website. I want to create a company that I want to be the biggest like stay hospitality company of all time. Like, I want to be bigger than Holiday Inn. Mm-hmm. I want to be bigger than Marriott. All those companies, I want to beat them. But I don't want to own any property.
Yep.
How crazy does that idea sound? Mm-hmm. Or, all right, I got an idea. Let's create an app. And I want to go after like Yellow Cab or a bunch of like other taxi companies. Here's the kicker. I don't want to own any cars.
Yep.
And that's how Uber started. Mm-hmm. That's how Lyft started. There's no such thing as too crazy of an idea.
Yeah.
Like when you break that down to like what that original meeting was, that was insane. Mm-hmm. Insane to think that those things could be successful.
Right.
Nothing's too crazy. And now you have an ecosystem of the app world. There's an Uber for everything.
Right.
We were just talking about the other day. There's an Airbnb for everything. And it's like, instead of like a home, there's this awesome app called Turo. No sponsor. You can if you want, but no sponsor. There's this new app and website called Turo where you can basically rent out your car to people. Very similar to Airbnb renting out your home. Same type of meeting that had to happen. I got an idea. I want to go after enterprise. I want to go after all those big car rental companies. I don't want to own any cars. Oh, how's that going to happen? It happened. And like they're blowing up and they're massive.
I feel like we need to think about an idea.
Yeah. Let's just get crazy. But like, that's the thing. Like whenever you were thinking you're too crazy, you're probably not.
Right.
It's probably not that crazy of an idea compared to like huge successes in our world that were idiotic when they first happened. Now they're amazing.
Right. Now they're like mainstays. You can't say Uber or Airbnb and those terms are unknown.
Yeah. I mean, the disruption like happening from insane, crazy, idiotic ideas is everywhere.
Right.
It's everywhere.
Okay. And I know we're talking to small business owners, but an example I thought of too was like, I don't know why I'm thinking about this with food products, but
are you hungry?
Yeah, maybe it's
almost
because we're
lunchtime.
hungry.
Yeah.
But like, think about like some of the big like food giants, like General Mills and Keebler and specifically like breakfast cereals. I feel like I see these like weird and create, like there's like Pop-Tarts breakfast cereal right now. Well, that brand isn't going anywhere. Their bread and butter is their Pop-Tarts. But every once in a while, they'll try some like weird, like Pop-Tart granola bar or like Pop-Tart cereal. Those almost always fail.
Yeah, they're on the shelf for the summer and then they're gone.
Yeah, but the company survives. And I've literally, not until this moment, ever given that any more thought than like, no, that didn't work. No. Or I'd think like, oh, that's gross. I would never buy that. But they try things. They sometimes work. They sometimes don't work. And those companies pick up and move on.
Well, there's another like quote. I don't know whose this is. I knew Zach's, but I don't know this one. It's like, it's just fail fast.
Yeah.
Like whatever you're doing, but fail fast. Recognize if it's a failure quickly and then move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be stuck with this idea that you think is really going to change the world, but like data is maybe showing it's not, and fail fast and keep moving on. And that could be macro or micro ideas. That could be literally an entire company, or what you're saying, more of a micro, just a new product line for a massive company.
Sure.
Fail fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
which goes back to just self-awareness and realizing awareness of if something's working or not, and something if it's you're working or not, or something like that.
Yeah. So we're talking a big game, but reality is fear of failure is a really big deal for people.
This stretches, oh man, I just keep thinking too, this stretches so far beyond like professional world.
Oh, absolutely.
This is the mom in the pickup line that has a 2-year-old older car than someone behind you. And you care so much about the other mom's opinion when that other mom means nothing to you and your happiness, or shouldn't at least. Like this stretches everywhere.
That other mom is blissfully unaware.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, no, or that other mom, there's a newer car from hers too.
Sure.
And she has that attitude as well.
It's that keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah. And like, so this stretches so far beyond professional development, businesses, products, whatever it is.
Oh, 100%.
This is humans.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe it's so hard. Maybe don't even, if you really struggle with this and like you really have a lot of self-doubt and like you fail a lot and you're stuck in this failure, maybe starting professionally isn't the greatest idea, because that root might be just coming from your human brain as a person, not just as a professional. So like really take some time, find those things, start being finding genuine happiness with what you have and what you've done. And that's another like tip of like really celebrating small wins as you go forward and trying to be more intentional about those small victories that happen in life, because we get so caught up on what we think are huge failures, but there were 20 small wins that happened before that failure. And we just ignore those. And the same thing in our life, you know, like our other lives. That mom in the pickup line, right? She has a working car.
Yeah.
She has a car that her kids love, that has seats everybody. There's more room for anybody than she'll ever have.
Sure.
There are moms in this world that don't. You know, it's just like finding happiness in little things leads up to those. When you hit a failure, if you have that good mindset of like, you know, that happened, but like, look at all the good that happened as well. That helps out a lot.
Yeah. We went as a team to a conference last week, and we heard Ji Zhang speak about rejection. Yeah. Honestly, probably inspired this blog, but he talks about rejection as a numbers game, which is really interesting. And I'll link his info in the show notes as well, because the fear of rejection and the fear of failure was such a big thing for him. He legitimately pivoted his career because he tried a couple.
Flip the switch.
He flipped the switch and he was like, okay, wait a minute. Let me focus on really the big issue here. Why am I so paralyzed by failure? Why am I so paralyzed by rejection? And so he has this really, it's fun. It's not funny because of how serious it got so quickly, but he literally did a social experiment on himself. He made it's called 100 Days of Rejection. He made a list of like crazy things.
Uber and Airbnb ideas.
Yes. Yeah. Ask a stranger for $100. Ask a stranger to play soccer in their backyard. I mean, just outrageous ideas. And so,
which were he designed those to fail.
Yes.
Like that's the important, like he didn't just come with these like, maybe this will work. No, they were literally designed to fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what he shared with us and our takeaway was it's all a numbers game. And once he got out of his comfort zone, and he was sharing hilarious stories of some instances, but what he found was that it was a numbers game. Eventually, someone said yes to his crazy request. Some stranger gave him $100. Some stranger let him through his home into his fenced backyard to play soccer. Here's
By himself.
adult man by himself in shin guards and soccer cleats. And he shared, he was a really funny speaker, but as he shared, like, once the guy let him in his house, he was so shocked by that yes that he stood like,
wait,
what do I do now?
Are you serious?
So it was really interesting and a really interesting way to kind of reframe this thought around failure, in that it's a numbers game. And obviously the examples that we gave are more silly. You don't want to take these gigantic risks with your company, but maybe it's a great starting point. Like, just try something that gets you out of your comfort zone. And the risk reward ratio isn't something that's going to alter your life in a massive way. You know, when G got told no to someone giving him $100, he was fine. You know, was his ego slightly bruised? Sure.
He honestly was more caught off guard and bruised in a weird way when someone said yes to one of these ideas.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that's a fun challenge. Actually, that may be a fun, like, in-office challenge to do with our team. Like, something that involves some sort of small risk on a personal level, but nothing that's going to, like, publicly shame your family or destroy your bank account or anything like that. So,
big scale on this idea, like the whole numbers game. Our life is a numbers game, right? We literally only have so many days we're going to be here. Like big scale, our life is a numbers game, and we are blessed with days, 24-hour increments where we could do something if we wanted to. The more you take that 24-hour challenge in a way and do something great that day, take a risk, do something great, the more likely the numbers game is going to show you something awesome is going to happen, right? And it's no different when owning a business. You know, we only have so many operating hours that our business is open. What are you going to do in those operating hours to further the chance that something great is going to happen? That's big scale of it, but it's going to happen. You know, some great things are going to happen, but at the same time, going back to our conversation of when you fail in that rut you can get in, the longer you're in that rut, the longer you're mentally there in that rut, the less chances you're going to have to be more successful.
yeah.
The longer time you spend there. Think about going back to the hurdles example. They sit there for an extra minute.
You've lost the race.
The race is gone.
Yeah.
You know, it's gone. You know, they've ruined that chance that day to win that race. Same thing in every other business example in the world. The longer you sit in that rut, I don't know, restaurants are easy examples, right?
Sure.
You make someone's sandwich wrong for breakfast. First customer off the gate. Technically, a micro failure. You screwed something up. They didn't have a great example. Your mental state the rest of the day depends on how you react to that moment.
Yeah.
Because if you're bummed, you're not going to be productive. You're going to miss opportunities to make something great happen. If you're bummed, you're going to pass that emotion onto your team, and they're going to be less productive because of it. It's that ripple effect of like emotional health in your office or your business is real. Get up. Make that next sandwich, move on, accept it, learn from whatever you screwed up. How did that happen? And then go. But it's truly a numbers game. And like, so there's some salespeople listening probably. They know this better than anybody. The old school days of like cold calling.
Yeah.
You're going to get one. You might have to call 100 before you get it, but you might get one.
Right.
It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
So is life. Life is a numbers game.
Yeah, and thinking about the small business owners, or maybe you want to be a small business owner, and just the big idea of starting something from the ground up is really overwhelming. I love the idea of breaking it down into those. There are micro failures, but there's also micro successes, and you can take your big audacious dream and break it down into small baby steps and map your plan out that way. Maybe it's as simple as every single day for this week, I'm going to write one sentence in my business plan, or every single day this week, I'm going to sketch one small idea for the logo for my business, something that moves you in that direction of progress.
Yeah.
And maybe you sketched that logo one day and you fail and it was really awful, but you can get back up and do it again the next day. And that's still a forward moving momentum to get you to your goal.
Yeah. And like, especially the social media world we live in, we've talked about this a few times, but the idea of like perfection, people put out what is perceived perfection. And I think a big mindset to have is like, that just doesn't, in reality, that doesn't exist. Like there are still unhappy customers at Apple.
Sure.
There are still unhappy customers at any of the largest businesses in the world. Things happen. Don't believe that perceived perfection that's online.
Yeah.
Worry about your own progress.
Yeah.
And like realizing no matter how much you progress, you're never going to actually get to perfection because that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to bring it back to Brene. You know, I had to.
My BFF.
But she talks about innovation. There is no innovation and creativity without failure. But talking about perfection in social media, Brene also talks a lot about vulnerability and courage. And both of those components, the vulnerability after you fail, the courage to get up and try again after you fail. And she has a really great quote about like, if you're not with me in the arena, getting dirty and failing with me, your opinion doesn't matter to me, which is
going back to what I was saying.
Going back to
we
what
care way
said
too much
earlier.
about the opinions of people that don't actually matter.
But thinking about like the whole perfection and social media thing, I feel like there is kind of this new wave rising of at least like some of the people I'm following on Instagram who have literally shifted their platform from showing perfect, beautiful, styled clothes and cute kids and amazing decorated homes to showing
the dirty laundry baskets of life, you know?
And that vulnerability and the courage to do that, because someone had to be the first one. They are attracting all the followers, all the people, because we identify with that. Yeah.
It's shifting. I mean, it's when social media began, that's everything. People like published unperfect Instagram photos. People published unedited things because that's all we knew. But then social media switched to people wanted to see perfection, or people were really attracted to perfection. Now it's switched again. You know, what's standing out is imperfection, is vulnerability. And I think in a good way, that's, you know, leaking out into just normal life as well. I mean, so in one of the talks at that conference we were just at, 10 years ago, it was amazing speaker, Joe Saxton. So Joe Saxton, I loved her talk. 10 years ago, if she would have mentioned a story that she mentioned in a talk the other day, she would have been outcasted. She would have been looked at as weird. Yeah. And that story involved like her being extremely honest and vulnerable about her anxiety and her mental health and how that has affected like her life as a mother, as a wife, as a business leader, out of like every role she plays in life, that was affecting it. On a stage like she was on 10 years ago, the room would have been cringing. Going back to that, you know, you're talking about like the room would have been awkward, cringing, like, oh, weird, mental health. What is that? But it wasn't. It was powerful. It was extremely powerful to have someone that you looked at as like, oh my gosh, she's a big deal. She's speaking on this stage at this conference. You've made it. Good for you. Oh wait, you have anxiety? I think more of you now. Yeah. Because I mean, we all connection. Do. Yeah, and it's amazing what in 10 years ago, what that room would have felt like, or what the response would have been like 10 years ago. And it's just really interesting. Yeah. Well, there is something universal we all have in common, and it's failure. Yeah. And those failures are obviously, those failures look different for every life, for every person, every age and stage, especially for our tribe of small business owners. Failure is universal. And I say that out of a place of love as someone who has failed multiple times trying new things. So we are really excited to bring this to you today, even if when you clicked on this podcast, you thought, oh, failure, what's this going to be about?
We hope we offered you a new perspective, maybe flip the switch a little bit on your thinking, how to transition and use failure to your benefit, to your own personal growth and development, for the growth and development of your small business, to be greater, better, and bigger in the future. So, as always, you can find more info about the Small Success Podcast over at larisamedia.com. All those things I mentioned that I would link in the show notes below, you can find it if you swipe up, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or if you're over on Spotify, you can check us out over at larisamedia.com. Thanks so much for joining us on today's episode of the Small Success Podcast. We will see you next time.